I want to also add like a little bit of complexity to this, right? And thinking about intersectionality, like how our different identities may impact or play a role on our financial relationship or a relationship to finances. And I think even just the way that women and girls are spoken of in relation to math and finances and numbers, right? And that it's more of a man thing and not so much of a woman thing, right? And girls aren't good at math. I think that I do remember when I first came to the United States and I showed my report card to the administrative assistant at the front desk. She looks at it and she says, "We all have trouble with math." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, okay, I have trouble with math." And that kind of stuck with me it was obviously a thing, but it definitely stuck with me throughout my life. So I think even just like thinking about how the messaging around girls and women and their ability to be well versed in mathematical, sciencey things. That's why we have women in STEM and why that's so important. I think just a little nuance to also think about. Personally, there are a lot of factors that contribute to how I show up with finances. As a kid, I really thought that my family was struggling financially just because of some familial drama. And that things were a lot worse than they actually are, right? So even as a kid, you see things in a particular way, you make this whole narrative and story about why these things were happening, right? And I don't know if my mom is going to want me to share this story or not, but I'll share it anyway. So I used to love eating sausages with like the little hot dogs with onions and ketchup and a little pepper sauce and mustard, right? And I love to eat that. And during the time when the family was having like some financial issues, I would get hot dogs every single day. And I swore it was because we were about to move into a state of poverty. So I ate those hot dogs, even though I was sick and tired of them. I didn't want to see another hot dog again. And I really started to think more in like the scarcity mindset. Like I have to be mindful of how I'm spending and what I'm doing. And I started stressing as a 9-year-old about money and whatever. And then, I just spoke to my mom years later and I was like, that was such a tough time for me. I didn't know what was going on because we moved from like being, I guess, relatively well off or comfortable to me eating hot dogs every day for lunch. And like, what was that like for you? And she was like, "Oh, no, I just gave you that because it was easy and I didn't want to make lunch, right? And you liked it." And I said, "What?" I said, "So we weren't about to hit the street because we were destitute?" And she was like, "No, I just didn't want to make a lunch every day. You liked it. You never complained about it, right?" Mm-hmm. So that is how I was like, I don't want anything to do with finances. Finances creates anxiety for me. I don't want to think about it. I want to look at it because, and I made up this whole story as a kid, right? And spent a long time living life from that 9-year-old mindset and perspective, right? So for me, that is what I would call financial trauma. Mm-hmm. It changed and shifted the way that I thought about finances and how I get anxious when I was like, oh, I have no money. And it's not that I'm broke, it's that I have a cash flow problem.
There you go.
There is a difference, right? So I am learning to move into that, right? So Keshia, can you talk a little bit about what financial trauma is and just like how do we navigate that?
Yeah. So financial trauma is the emotional and psychological distress that results in negative financial decisions, such as poverty, job loss, etc. So I could share a little bit of my background in that, where I have experienced job loss, and my job loss experience lasted a full year. So I was really on the ropes of negative financial decisions that I had made from before, where I was just buying a lot of clothes, just clothes, because my my mother, we used to, and I'm dating myself, but my mother, we used to shop at Conway.
Oh
And
yeah, Church Avenue,
and
Utica. Hello.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Conway, Bobby's, etc. And the kids used to laugh at me. Or like if she buys sneakers, now that Feli and New Balance is style, back then it was not really in style. They used to laugh at me. So I used to say, I need to be in the latest everything to look the part. So I was just buying clothes, unnecessary clothes, clothes that I know I would have never wear in public. I was just buying because I just needed to have it. So just in case.
Mhm.
So when a person is experiencing a, a, a negative experience in their past, they're dealing with the emotional and psychological distress of it that impact the behaviors they have moving forward now. So for me, with the job loss, I took that in and I had to be very mindful of how I was spending money. I couldn't look the part of my friends who was making more money than me, but I was trying so hard to emulate that part of myself to be accepted so and so to them when they accepted me no less. So how do we navigate that? I think we have to acknowledge the triggers. We have to acknowledge that we are not in the same space as our friends. But we also have to acknowledge that we're not in the space of poverty either.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the scarcity mindset, that's where I struggle. I give you a quick story. I cracked my phone screen this week. So it's giving me so much trouble. I know I need a new phone. So I went to T-Mobile and I said, okay, well, I cracked my screen, it's bleeding. And like every time I scroll up, it always scrolls
Cut
down
your
for me.
fingers? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And the next thing I know, he was telling me, oh, if you change this or you buy a new phone, my bill usually was like $80 a month. Now, adding the new phone and the insurance of the phone would be $150 a month. And I said, oh, okay. And guess what I have? I still have the phone. So it's hard for me to, knowing that I have a need and I have to address the need, but because they put a price point in my head, and forgive me, Kentis, I don't do the budget, I don't do the spreadsheets, but I already know like what I have in my account, because another thing about financial trauma is that every day you check your accounts. You want to make sure that the money is there. And that's what I do. In the morning, I make sure like I know I have a bill coming out. That's why I have two separate checking accounts for the bills and a regular bill. So a regular checking account. So if I have the regular checking account and it goes into deficit, I'm used to that deficit. But that's the reason why I oversave, because I could address that deficit. And it's not the means of me spending money. I'm not spending money. It's just that I'm not making enough of it. And unfortunately, in my profession as a social worker, we are so valued, we so needed, but we are paid so low. Yeah. So you have to address, and this is what I'm learning, is that just because I have to live thriftily, I doesn't mean I have to be thriftily all the time. Yeah. So I know my problem is I have to get a new job. But my issue is, I know that for sure, but my issue is I'm loyal and I find purpose in the job I have now. And it's hard for me to remove the loyalty and purpose to pursue a job that makes more money. And I may not make the necessary thing, but would I be happy? Because I'm happy at this job. You know, full transparency, the kids get on my nerves, but I'm happy at the job. You know, because I see that I'm making a difference. I'm the difference maker in their lives to say, oh, I could address my mental health and not be judged crazy. But then it's like, if I go for a new job, will that purpose and passion and that intention follow? Or I'm just using it because I need a new job because I need to make more money. So I think our psychological and emotional distress from it is like, where should I go? Should I follow the trend of making more money so my life could be easy? Or am I sticking to the passion and purpose I have now and just adjust accordingly? And sometimes when we try to adjust accordingly, we hurt ourselves even more and we go deeper into the scarcity mindset. So I think we have to navigate what's our triggers, what our past, and how we can make a better part of our future, not emulating what we thought we went through in our past, like how you talked about eating those hot dog sandwiches and sausages for lunch.
There was no sandwich. It was just straight hot dog.
Oh, straight hot dog. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
You said a lot just now, Keshia. So the way I view it, honestly, it's really about what problem are we trying to solve, right? And this is sometimes a conversation I have, not just in my own house, my wife, and sometimes my son. It's what problem are we addressing? Practical passions and our passions and what we love to do, they're not oftentimes practical, right? Many of us would love to live a life where we are philanthropists and we are able to give back to the communities and serve underserved areas. But the practicals of it just don't exist for those particular dynamics to be there, out the gate for most of us. And so to me, the way I view this, what problem are we really trying to solve? Or what are we really trying to address here? I've had my stint with coming up in a household that was financially deficit, and I dealt with a lot of that. And so for me, I think I approach it in a very different way because I learned to appreciate and value the simple things, and to also understand that I can live on the simple things, and I can live at a place where simplicity doesn't mean expensive. It means that it's affordable, it's in reach, it's doable, it's something I like, and it's something I don't have to break the bank about. But ultimately, I had to figure out what problem I wanted to solve. Going into business for myself was not a practical decision. It was a decision to address what I believe was a more need to be served. Now, over time, that decision became more practical, but out the gate, it didn't start off that way. So I think that adjusting the charms, and I'm definitely not a licensed therapist or anything of the sort. I've just spoken with enough clients that indicate to me some of that as well in my experience, and I usually tell them, like, really, truly got to go back to the base of what you're trying to address. Now, if you have a phone and the issue we need to communicate, then what is the cost of that communication, and is it worth incorporating an additional expense in order to be able to communicate with everyone else around us? And in 10 times out of 10 scenarios, it is worth the cost, but maybe we can make an adjustment. Maybe we don't have to get this phone. Maybe we can move to that phone. There's something I tell my son. He wants an iPhone. I'm like, okay, great, wonderful. Do you have iPhone money? Because the practicalities of trying to have this and have a particular look is not something I'm willing to sustain. So if you're willing now to solve the problem of your cash deficit by getting a job that will now cover that cost, then you can do whatever you want. But until you address the problem is not going to be solved.
And I want to add it to bit is more so like for me personally, I live on simple things, and I don't see the problem because I have the finances. I have 2 saving accounts, but it's for me. It's out of sight, out of mind. I live in the now of what comes in the more accessible
Gotcha.
accounts that I have.
Gotcha.
So when it's in the deficit, it's like, okay, I live in the deficit. But if people ask me, oh, you could go on vacation, I have the money to go on a vacation. I just don't see it in my account. But if I go into my savings account, it's there. I just refuse to go there because I always say it's out of sight, out of mind. And I think, go ahead.
You sound you sound like my wife. One, you sound a lot like some of the clients I have, and so what I think might be a great solution for the problem in which you're facing, instead of taking it as a month-to-month cash flow, consider taking some money out of the savings to pay down, so that way your month-to-month bill is not affected that drastically. Because I know, like with T-Mobile, for instance, just using this as an example, just to point out some practical points, and hopefully some people can have some great takeaway from this, right? The lump sum of the money is taken over time, right? And so the way it works is that we'll pay something down, and then over time we'll take on the rest of it. If we don't want to deal with the overtime stressors, then consider paying down a little bit more, so that way we can now reduce the month-to-month cost of what that expense is. So if T-Mobile is saying don't put down zero, just use this as an example. If they're saying don't put nothing down, we'll cover the whole cost over the course of time, that may not be the option for you. You may want to speak to them and say, okay, if I put down $300 or $200, what would that look like now? And until that number makes sense to you, because what you're doing is you're eliminating the expense over time by alleviating, over the month-to-month cash flow. You're alleviating your month-to-month cash flow by putting a little something extra now from the savings that you have already accumulated. And then you can always reimburse that savings over time as well. So then you cut down your expenses a little bit, $25 or so, and say, I'm going to repay myself the $300, $200 I paid out over the course of this next 5 to 6 months. I'm going to reimburse myself for that expense. So I'm going to tackle 2 things at once. I'm going to tackle my now issue by putting up a little bit extra, and I'm going to be able to save enough to put back into that account, so that way it's not in a deficit, and still be able to afford something month over month without it driving me to a place I don't want to be.
Right. Very true. Very true. I do that. Right, exactly. And I do that. It's just prying the money out of my head. Like that's the whole thing.
Give me your card, I will get you the phone.
Right? It's like I have the card, and I'm like, I'm not giving it. And it's interesting. It's interesting enough. It's like my friends could say, Keshia, you don't have no debt, which is true. I don't have no debt. The only debt I have is student loans. I have no debt. It's just like, okay, if I see that, it's like with this phone, it's like, if I can still call, I'm just gonna use the phone to call. And I would suffer just scrolling screens. It is what it is. But that's how financial trauma has like so intrude in my life, where it's like I have to ensure I keep things to last. It's like when you have the toothpaste and you every little drop. I'm rolling it up until I take every last part out and be like, okay, now the toothpaste is fully done. And it's not living cheaply. It's just that, when a person dealing with that heavy financial negative experience of trauma pertaining to money, that's how they see their lives.
I understand.
And some people, they had the best childhood, and I had a good childhood, but I also remember instances where my mother was like, oh, we have to give to your family in Guyana versus you buying new sneakers. So I sacrifice your convenience and your happiness, and I know you need new sneakers because I see that you need new sneakers, but they need more.
Yeah.
And that's how sometimes financial trauma plays a role in a person's life.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Right?
I've had some of those experiences because my family is from St. Vincent, so I 100% I've dealt with it.
I think a lot of us Caribbean folks can understand, and also, you know, people from like other cultures and other nations, right? Like the need to send back, right, or send home, and how that can impact the finances, right? Maybe it's okay, and you're okay with your family here in the United States or wherever, but now you have maybe half a family that you got to take care of, or you know, Christmas comes, or you know, the birthdays, you got to send the money home and set aside, right? So that the paycheck is spreading to a lot more people than would typically be expected. Right?
You endure the struggle.
Yeah, and I don't think we talk about that enough, and acknowledge that enough. That you are not only, our parents usually are not only taking care of us, but also taking care of their siblings or others who didn't have the opportunity to come to the United States and have a better financial situation, right? So, yeah. Keshia, we going to T-Mobile or wherever we got to go after this. Just I'm going to pick you up. Speaking of like just the financial trauma and the way that our mindsets have just been shifted and created in this way because of that trauma, how can we shift out of that? What are some ways, or what are some things that we can do to start that process, that healing process of knowing that we don't have to operate from a place of trauma, right? If we're moving into a healthier space, what are some things that we can do?
I think not and I think since we know where our trauma stem from, I think part of it is the acknowledgement of it. Like we may never acknowledge that this is what was my reality then. It's not my reality now. So I think doing the whole practical steps of knowing how to budget, knowing how to prioritize, do the auto pay for your bills. So is you have enough in the account to pay the bills, but also you have enough to sustain the month is ideal, but also heal from that emotional scar that sometimes you had inflicted on yourself that impacts how you live today. And, you know, I throw myself in the room that's what I'm doing, where I am saying that was then, this is now. You're in a much better space. Yes, you have you have bills that you are a single woman. You have to take care of yourself and sustain, but you don't have to live below your needs and your needs. And I think once you start realizing that it could be a shift for you to move forward. Now, the ending of the T-Mobile story is that I am going back to get the new phone because I could see that, I could utilize, in my budget in my head, and forgive me, Kentis, I don't write nothing down, but in my head, I could say, I could afford the extra $50 for the bill because I'm paying for the device for this amount of time, and it won't put me in extreme deficit. It's just I have to wait for a specific day to do it because that's what they told me I had to do. So I'm just following people's instructions.
Gotcha.
But it's more of like allowing myself to heal and understand and acknowledge the hurt in order for me to move on and learn the practicality of my mistakes and just, you know, I would say make mistakes and then also learn from them too. And know that I'm not in the past, I'm in the present, and I'm securing for my future. And I think a lot of people is dabbling and dibbling in, which is me, I'm talking to me. I'm dabbling into the past and present. I'm looking at that. And it goes back to earlier what you said about living in the abundance mindset. And as a person who is on their spiritual journey, I could say, oh, I want to live in an abundance mindset. But then I have to be realistic and say, well, my faith is not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because I keep seeing me in the deficit. So it's like, if I'm saying God is going to give me the abundance, where's the abundance in what I see now? But then I have to shift it to being like, no, I live abundantly, because I could have a worse situation than where I am now. I couldn't even have a job. And I have to be grateful in where I'm at and learn that I know I can move forward in own timing and own ways, and continuously doing the habit needed. And I think where a lot of people fall short is the consistency. And when they do something consistent and they don't see it right away, they get vexed.
Mm-hmm.
And they struggle with that part. They struggle. I'm sorry, but they get upset at that part where the consistency and the now doesn't align.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, what actions do I have to always have to do? I have to maintain this all the time. This is tiring. And it's like, I understand it's tiring, but it's something that you have to do to thank your older self. You know, your older self is looking at you saying, thank you for doing this. Because now, you know, I could afford this. I could do this. I could do that. And, you know, I could handle these things. So I think, you know, I feel like I touched a nerve at this point.
No, Keisha, I almost said amen. I had to remember I wasn't in church.
I'm sorry, but there's no jab, there's no stab, but I think the consistency in the action, you know, when it's misaligned, it gets us very frustrated that I don't see progress going.
Mm-hmm.
And doing this on a monthly, daily, it is exhausting. Yeah. And I have the compassion, and me too. I have to always shift from the scarcity to the abundance, because that's, you know, a different part of me of like leaning on faith, not what I don't understand, or what I try to understand, or what I try to control. Okay. So it's a lot. It's a little dabbling, but I assure you, when you stick with the consistency and you stick with the actions, then you see the progress. It's just going to be incremental.
Yes.
Woo. Well. Okay, Keisha. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No. You're speaking the truth, right? Only hip dogs holler, right? Isn't that the same? Yeah, hollering, trying to keep that internal. I think, you know, what resonated was the consistency part, and Kentis can attest to this. I will have these moments where I'm just like, why am I not a multimillionaire yet? What is this? What is happening? And then he'll just say, yeah, no, you're going to get there. You just have to keep on track and watch the spending. And he'll say all of that, and I'll say, okay. And then the next day, I totally have forgotten all of that. Whatever it is that I want to do. So the consistency is important. And I think also, you know, just having conversations with people and
right.
speaking about like where you are, because they have an outside objective experience, right? And they can see that perspective of like, you are in your trauma and you're experiencing all of those things in the way that you see the world. And then, you know, you have a trusted person, because there's some people who are, you know, maybe don't have your best interest at heart that might be leading you astray. So having someone that you can trust and be vulnerable about like what you're thinking, what you're experiencing when it comes to your finances, I think would be helpful with that awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have conversation about this. This is very taboo. And I think, you know, having a trusted individual, but also trusting yourself and the decision making will ensure the success that you are looking for in the multi-million dollar. Because I'm looking for being a multi-million dollar as well.
Yeah, that's all I see myself as, really. Like, that is the only option for me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, but we're gonna.
I appreciate what you said so much, Keisha. Many people don't understand. You got to play the long game with finances. What's built over pattern and over time is what we eventually will be able to either enjoy or have to pay for, right? And so I believe, because we're in a day and age where everybody's getting rich like that, people are millionaires, and we got a whole bunch of things that are out there that are not necessarily legal or accurate. People believe that it's that instantaneous, but it's not. It's built over time. And as quickly as you gain money, right, sustaining money is a very different game, because you can get to $1 million, but sustaining $1 million is a very different thing, because how you spend on $100 level is going to be reflective of how you spend on $1 million level. So it's important to get those things that you were talking about. Many of the things that you're talking about, Keisha. That's I'm directing this very much to you, Keisha, and not no one else that's here.
I don't know why. I was like, wait, what?
No pun intended or nothing like that.
Right.
It's a real thing. It's a real thing. How you allocate your money. What do you and how do you assign your money? What you're assigning it to is ultimately what it will do. And if you don't assign that money towards something, it will become wasteful spending. So you touch on that, and I'm trying, not to sound churchy or nothing like that, but you almost brought an amen out of me a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Keisha, for sharing.
You're welcome.
All right. No, I listen. These are things that I have heard before and have ignored. And what you do with $100 will be reflective of what you do with $1 million.
Right.
I'm not gonna be a millionaire for long. Based on I'm gonna be a millionaire today and then tomorrow. Who knows? So, but you know what? It is a work in progress, and it is a journey, and it's about starting and adjusting as we go, and not expecting that it will be perfect at any point, but certainly not in the beginning. So I really appreciate your thoughts and your perspectives, and I want to ask you both, what is something that you want to give as a piece of advice for those who are maybe in the beginning stages of their financial relationship?
Now you speaking like as an individual or like business owner?
I mean, if you want to throw in a little bit of both, whichever is calling for you.
To me, boy, this might, I don't want it to sound bad at all or come across the wrong way, because I'm definitely not coming for nobody. But we touched on it a little bit earlier. It's a word that people often run from. They hate it, they despise it. It's called budgeting. Budgeting.
I'd smile.
And it's okay if you have a budget that runs in your mind or if it's written down, just long as it's something that you can always refer back to and to align what you have done with what's actually what the limits that you actually are supposed to remain in. There's a wonderful book that I read. My brother actually forced me to read this, by the way. And I'll give him credit for that because it taught me a lot, and it's a very easy read. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. Most billionaires to date have that book as a book that they have read, and the principles of it are very much sound. I have used it myself. I've taught my son to use it. I've also exposed it to my wife as well years ago, and she has used it. It's something, the principles work if you work them. So becoming educated and being willing to stay consistent within the framework that you have set out it's paramount, right? If this is an area that you struggle in, an area that you don't even want to look at, or an area that you just, it gives you hives and cold sweat every time you think about it, then align yourself with someone that can help you. Go and talk to an accountant, go and talk to a CPA, someone that aligns to where you want to go, right? And you want to make sure that that person can speak to different components of what you're doing, i.e., tax, i.e., financial spending and planning, and whatever those goals look like. So that way they can help to guide you along the way. So that way you don't have to have cold sweats and borderline heart attacks every time you think about this. Align yourself to that. It will be paramount for you, whether you're coming out in business as a business owner, and you want to go out there, you're passionate about something, or you have a skill set that's superb and will be able to bring you in a lot of money. Well, consider that you can't do all things. We have different people that we ought to need a part of our team, and that will fulfill different roles and vantage points, whether that person is brought into your company or that person stands outside of your company. And you want to have those individuals around you so that way you can focus on the area that you are good at, and they can focus on the area that they're good at. You cannot do it all. It ain't enough time in the day, ain't enough strength in your body. It's just too much, especially in the area of business. It's too much to cover. If you're a person that you have a busy life, you're working a 9 to 5, and you may not, and like I said, like this is something that you're afraid of, then set yourself up with an accountant, align yourself with an accountant that will help you to navigate this. It's important, because what we don't know and what we don't set in practical rules for, we will continue to abuse, right? So it's to our best interest, if we want that future in financial freedom, or we want that future where we actually have the finances that can be able to afford the lifestyle that we want. Because for me personally, I don't want to be in my 60s and working, and that's nothing against no one that is. Just to be clear, it's nothing against no one that is. You're perfectly fine if you feel like this is what you want to do, and you especially if you're doing something that you love and you just want to keep doing it. Absolutely, go for it. You understand? What I'm speaking more so to is the necessity of finances that forces you to have to go and do something in a time of your life that you may not want to spend that way. So I think it's very much important. Get yourself, read that book, read it over again if it doesn't make sense. Read it, look at the principles. It will help you. It will bless you. And trust me on that. It has done it for me. I'm living proof of it. And get and align your thinking to that, because part of the way that we think and the lack of how we think of money is part of the problem. You have to be mindful of how you're spending. I have found that more people go broke on thoughtless spending than they do on thoughtful spending. This is why I say that how you manage the $100 is also going to be reflective of how you manage $1,000,000. And trust me, $1,000,000 is not a lot of money. I know it may seem that way, but it's not a lot of money. You can blow that in a minute. You can make one bad decision and that money is gone. And even when you get it, how do you maintain it? How do you grow it? How do you build it? Those are all things that you need experts around you. If you're not one yet, get aligned to someone that can help you, please. Trust me, there are more people that have gone broke from $1,000,000 than there are people that have been able to maintain it. That's why when we look out there in the world, we only see the same amount of faces, because they figured out something that some of the others have not. We can't do it. Align yourself, get these principles down pat, and allow for it to produce in your life. And I pray you take that advice and you work it all the way through.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that. I did hear about the richest man in Babylon, so I will read that. I have read The Psychology of Money.
Yeah,
Um,
good book.
and it was a really good book because it touches on the scarcity mindset and the abundance mindset too. So I also read a lot of financial freedom books. So if you could educate yourself, if books are not your thing, because I know some people don't like to read, if you're more of a visual learner, then you could go into watching podcasts on YouTube where they talk about financial wellness, like financial freedom from Jamelia Sufrant. And she's a Black woman. She's from Jamaica. She talks about the scarcity, but also trying to achieve her journey of financial wellness and freedom. You could look at Ramit Sethi, I will teach you how to be rich. Things like that. Educate yourself, but also I want to stretch what Kentis said about aligning yourself with the right people, but also get the therapist. Get your feet. You have to have a team of your therapist, your CPA, and your accountant. So that way, what you think that is financial wellness, or what you think you're trying to achieve as financial wellness, it tackles these areas where what you invest in, what you spend, and what you think about money. And I think that is very important to do and utilize the education resources. The library is a wealth of information that some of us do not take advantage of. New York City has free information. And this also a lot of people don't know that New York City have I think it's a financial education series or literacy where you could go in and meet with counselors and you could talk about your money and they could counsel you. A lot of people don't know that. And I think we just are absent-minded about these things that we want to achieve, and we want to be like our favorite celebrities or favorite, influencers, but we don't take the time to say, okay, let me see how I think about money, how I can manage my money, how could I even stretch, and how I could maintain and sustain the money that is coming in. So I think that is very important. Get educated, get your healing, whether if it's related to financial therapy or not. At least, work on this path of wellness for you. Then everything will just kind of fall in line.
So I also have a financial planner who is like also half therapist, because we end up spending time talking about all the stressors that have come up as a result of the financial aspects that I have going on in my life. So shout out to Josh Smith, who has really been, with between him and Kentis, like they've been holding me together and trying to rein in this thunderstorm of financial spending that I can be at times. So I definitely support, advocate having a team, having trusted advisors, just really showing you what your options are. And of course, at the end of the day, the decision is yours, but at least you're making it from a perspective that has a little bit more information and education, right? And, if you cannot afford to have an accountant or a financial planner, the resources like the library and doing your own research is also an option too, right? So knowing a little bit more than you knew before, right? By speaking with people, looking at the podcasts, just reading, listening to other people who have been in similar situations and making informed decisions can make a wealth of difference. So I really encourage you to go out there, to be a little less afraid, hopefully, of starting this financial journey, and to reach out with your community and your network, because there are people who may know a lot of things that you don't know and can share and offer wisdom about that. I hope that you found today's episode helpful. I want to say thank you to my co-hosts, my guests today, Keshia and Kentis, for the laughs and also so much information. So thank you. Wishing you guys well, and I hope to see you again on the couch.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Be well, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the episode with Keshia, Kentis, and myself today. I hope you learned a lot. I hope that you can take some of the things that we talked about to share with your friends and family as well. You know, this episode and all the episodes that you find on this channel are not meant to be a replacement for a relationship with a professional mental health clinician, or in today's case, a financial professional as well. So if you find anything that's interesting, I hope that this encourages you to start your journey on wellness, be it in a therapeutic sense or in a financial sense. If you liked what you saw today, please like, subscribe, and share the video, and to let us know any comments that you might have about your thoughts on today's episode. Thank you so much. Be well, and I'll see you next time on the couch.